The council chamber stretched wide and tall, filled with beings from a dozen different worlds. Commander Daewon Kim stood near the back, his gray hair cut short, his uniform bearing marks of 3 decades of service. He watched as holographic displays showed the advancing enemy forces. Red markers spread across the star maps like a disease. Admiral Velthar stood at the center podium, his blue scales reflecting the dim light. He was twice the height of any human, with arms thick as tree trunks. When he spoke, his voice rumbled through the chamber. The Vexirian swarm has taken 12 colonies in 4 months. They move fast and hit hard. We need strength to match their aggression. Captain Hannah Park stood beside Daewon, her tablet showing tactical data. She leaned close and whispered, "Their strategy is flawed. They're planning a direct assault." Daewon nodded slightly. He had seen this before. Young commanders, strong warriors, all thinking that power alone could win wars. He had learned differently on Mars, on Europa, on 100 battlefields where humans had clawed victory from the jaws of death. A Krillian general pointed at the map. "We send our main fleet here. We crush them with superior firepower. Simple and effective." Daewon raised his hand. The gesture was small, almost polite. Several aliens turned to look at him with what might have been curiosity or amusement. "Commander Kim," Velthar said, his tone barely hiding contempt. "Do the humans have something to add?" Daewon stepped forward. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. "Admiral, the Vexirians have adapted to every coalition tactic so far. They learn fast. A direct assault might not what?" Velthar interrupted. "Might not work, because you humans lack the stomach for real combat." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the kind that dismissed a child's suggestion at an adult table. Hannah's jaw tightened, but Daewon remained calm. His face showed nothing. Velthar continued, warming to his subject. "Humans are fragile. Your bones break easily. You tire after mere hours of exertion. You have no natural armor, no claws, no venom. You are the weakest species in this coalition." He spread his massive arms wide. "You will support from the rear. Supply lines, medical stations, communications. Leave the fighting to those built for it." Lieutenant Jun Lee stood with the other junior officers. At 27, he was young enough to feel the sting of those words. His hands clenched into fists. Around him, other human officers showed similar reactions, but Daewon simply nodded once and returned to his position. The council meeting continued for another hour. Battle plans were drawn. Fleets were assigned positions. The human contingent was given support duties, far from the front lines. When the meeting ended, the alien commanders filed out, talking among themselves about glory and victory. Daewon waited until the chamber emptied. Then he turned to his officers. Hannah, June, and 3 others remained. "Well," June said, barely controlling his anger, "that was humiliating." "Good," Daewon said quietly. Everyone looked at him in surprise. Hannah understood first. "They underestimate us." "Completely," Daewon confirmed. He walked to the tactical display and brought up the star charts again. "They see our weaknesses. They don't see what those weaknesses taught us." He zoomed in on the Vexirian advance routes. "We humans spent 10,000 years killing each other. We got very good at it. We learned to win fights against faster predators, stronger enemies, and harsher environments. Not because we were powerful, but because we refused to die." His finger traced possible attack patterns. "The coalition species are strong. Most of them evolved as apex predators on their worlds. They think strength is enough." "But it's not," Hannah said, already seeing where his thoughts led. "It never is," Daewon replied. "Strength without strategy is just noise. They'll learn that against the Vexirians, the hard way." June leaned over the display. "So what do we do?" Daewon smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had survived battles that should have killed him. We prepare. We study the enemy. We plan for when the coalition's strength fails them. He looked at each officer in turn. And when they come asking for help, we'll be ready to show them what experience really means. Over the next week, the human forces worked quietly. They analyzed every piece of data on the Vexirians. They studied attack patterns, biological markers, communication methods. While coalition forces prepared their weapons and sharpened their natural claws, humans sharpened their minds. Private Minho Choi, fresh from training, watched the preparations with confusion. "Sir," he asked Daewon one evening, "why aren't we angry? They insulted us. They pushed us aside." Daewon checked a weapons inventory on his tablet. "Anger is useful in battle, Private. Before battle, it clouds judgment." He looked up at the young Marine. "They think we're weak. Let them think it. Underestimated enemies win wars." "But we are weaker," Minho said. "Physically, I mean. That Krillian admiral could tear me apart." "Probably," Daewon agreed. "But wars aren't won by who's strongest. They're won by who's still standing when the smoke clears. And humans are very, very good at still standing." The coalition fleet departed 3 days later. Massive warships, bristling with weapons, crewed by species bred for combat. They headed toward the Helios sector with confidence. The human battle group remained behind, officially designated as reserve support. Hana watched them go from the observation deck. Daewon joined her, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "I know," Hana replied. "The question is how many will return." Daewon sipped his coffee. It was bitter and strong, the way soldiers had drunk it for centuries. "Enough to need us, not enough to win without us." Below them, human crews continued their preparations. They moved with practiced efficiency, without boasting or display. Just steady, determined work. The work of survivors, the work of veterans who had earned every scar, every lesson, every hard truth about warfare. The galaxy was about to learn those truths, too. The first reports came back after 6 days. "Victory," Admiral Velthar announced. The coalition fleet had engaged Vexirian forces near the 3rd planet of the Helios system. Initial contact showed the enemy retreating. Velthar's message was brief and proud. The war would be over within weeks. Daewon read the report in his ready room. Chief Engineer Yuna Song sat across from him, her dark eyes scanning the same data. "They're celebrating too early," she said. "They don't know any better," Daewon replied. He highlighted a section of the battle data. "Look at the Vexirian withdrawal pattern. It's too organized, too deliberate." Yuna leaned forward. "A tactical retreat? Maybe. Or they're learning, adapting." He closed the file. "We'll know soon enough." 3 days later, they knew. The second battle report was different. Urgent, confused. The Vexirians had returned in greater numbers. They had split into smaller groups, attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. Coalition ships, designed for direct combat, found themselves surrounded and isolated. The enemy used chemical weapons that ate through hull plating. They deployed biological agents that affected non-human species in terrible ways. The casualty reports were staggering. 15 ships lost, thousands of coalition soldiers dead or incapacitated. The proud warriors who had mocked human weakness were learning about a different kind of strength, the strength of adaptation, of evolution designed for one purpose, killing efficiently. "They need help," Hana said, reading the emergency transmission. Her face was pale. "Velthar is requesting support from all reserve units." Daewon stood at the window of the command center, looking out at the stars. Behind him, his officers waited. "What are our orders?" June asked. "Plot a course to Helios," Daewon said. Best possible speed. Alert all human vessels to prepare for combat operations. The human battle group moved out within the hour. 12 ships, small compared to coalition vessels, but fast and maneuverable. They were designed by a species that had learned to fight smarter, not harder. Every system had redundancies. Every weapon had been tested in actual combat, not just simulations. Private Minho Choi felt his stomach tighten as the ship entered faster-than-light travel. Around him, other Marines prepared their equipment. Most were quiet, focused. These were not fresh recruits playing at war. These were veterans of Earth's colony conflicts, people who had seen friends die, who had learned that survival required more than hope. "First real deployment?" asked Sergeant Jin Park, a stocky man with burn scars along his left arm. He was checking detonators with practiced hands. "Yes, Sergeant," Minho admitted. "Nervous?" "Yes, Sergeant." Jin nodded. "Good. Fear keeps you alert. Just remember your training and watch your team's back. We're not as strong as them." He gestured vaguely toward where coalition forces fought. "But we're meaner. We've had to be." The human fleet arrived at Helios Sector to find chaos. Coalition ships limped through space, hulls breached, systems failing. Velthar's flagship, a massive vessel called the Dominion's Pride, was barely operational. Bodies drifted in the void, frozen monuments to overconfidence. Day One established communication immediately. "Admiral Velthar, this is Commander Kim. We're here to assist. What's your situation?" The response took a moment. When Velthar's face appeared on screen, it was a shock. The proud admiral looked defeated. His scales were dulled, one arm hung uselessly. "Commander, the Vexirians, they're not like any enemy we've faced. They adapt to our tactics within hours. They use weapons we cannot counter. Our strength means nothing." "Understood," Day One said calmly. "Pull your forces back to defensive positions. We'll buy you time to regroup." "You?" Velthar's expression showed disbelief even through his pain. "Commander, with respect, we are the Coalition's finest warriors. If we cannot stand against them, how can you?" "Because we're not trying to overpower them," Daiwan replied. "We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to survive them, learn from them, and then make them regret ever meeting us." The transmission ended. Hana turned to Daiwan. "That was quite a promise." "Then we'd better keep it," he said. "Deploy reconnaissance drones. I want detailed scans of every Vexirian ship, every attack pattern, every weapon signature. Yuna, analyze their chemical weapons. Find out what they're made of and how to counter them." The human ships moved into position, not charging forward like the Coalition had, but spreading out, creating a defensive screen. When the Vexirians came, they came fast. Organic ships, looking more grown than built, swarming like insects toward what they perceived as easy prey. The first wave hit the human line with full force, but humans had prepared. Point defense systems, designed from centuries of missile warfare, tracked and destroyed incoming projectiles with precision. When Vexirian ships closed to melee range, expecting weak opponents, they met coordinated crossfire from multiple angles. Human weapons were not the most powerful, but they were accurate and relentless. "They're adapting to our firing patterns," Hana reported from the tactical station. "Adjusting their approach vectors." "Expected," Day One said. "Switch to pattern Delta 7. Randomize firing intervals." The battle lasted 9 hours. Not the quick, glorious clash that Coalition forces had sought, but a grinding, exhausting contest. Human ships took damage, but none were destroyed. They gave ground when pressed, counterattacked when opportunities appeared, and continuously adjusted their tactics. Yuna worked frantically in the engineering bay, analyzing captured Vexirian weapons. Dr. Minji Kang, a combat medic who doubled as a biochemist, helped process the data. Their chemical weapons target specific genetic markers, Minji reported. They're designed to affect coalition species. But not humans? Yuna asked. Our biology is different enough. We're resistant, maybe even immune. Minji pulled up a molecular display. We can synthesize a counter-agent, distribute it to coalition forces as an aerosol treatment. When the Vexirians finally withdrew, they did so in confusion. The small, weak humans had not broken, had not fled, had done what the stronger coalition could not, survive and hold the line. Velthar's voice came over the communication channel, quietly this time. Commander Kim, I was wrong about your species. Day One was exhausted. His crew was exhausted. But the job was not finished. Admiral, we need to talk strategy. Real strategy, not just throwing ships at the enemy. Can you accept tactical advice from a human? There was a long pause. Then, Commander, at this point I will accept tactical advice from anyone who can stop these creatures. What do you need? Daewon looked at Hana, who nodded. Full tactical control, Admiral, and trust. Can you give me those? Another pause. Pride warred with necessity. Necessity won. You have command, Commander Kim. All coalition forces in this sector will answer to you. Daewon allowed himself a small smile. Not of triumph, but of grim satisfaction. Then let's show these Vexirians what veterans can do. The command center of the human flagship filled quickly. Coalition officers, some still wearing bandages from recent battles, filed in alongside human personnel. They watched Daewon with mixed expressions. Some showed doubt. Others showed desperate hope. All showed exhaustion. Daewon stood before the tactical display, waiting until everyone settled. Hana dimmed the lights, and the holographic maps illuminated the room with soft blue light. We're going to win this war, Daewon said simply, but not the way you've been fighting it. A Krillian captain, scales scarred from chemical burns, spoke up. Commander, we tried overwhelming force. We tried superior numbers. Nothing worked. They adapt too quickly. I know, Daewon said. That's because you're fighting them like apex predators. You're trying to dominate them through strength. But humans learned something important over our history. Sometimes the smartest thing is not to fight fair at all. He gestured, and the display changed. Images appeared, scenes from Earth's history. Ancient humans hunting massive beasts with simple spears. Medieval armies using terrain to defeat larger forces. Modern soldiers using guerrilla tactics against overwhelming odds. We were never the strongest species on our planet. We were prey for thousands of years. But we learned. We adapted. We survived by being smarter, more persistent, and more creative than anything trying to kill us. Colonel Sung-Ho Bei stepped forward. He was lean and quiet, with eyes that had seen too much. The Vexirians communicate through pheromones, he said. We've confirmed this through analysis. Their ships emit chemical signals to coordinate attacks. It's efficient and fast. He paused. It's also a weakness. Hana brought up new data. If we disrupt their communication, their swarm tactics fall apart. Individual Vexirian units are deadly but not particularly intelligent. They rely on collective coordination. So we blind them, Velthar said slowly, understanding dawning. Cut their communications. And then we isolate them, Daewon continued. Break them into smaller groups. Use terrain, asteroids, and debris fields to funnel their movements. Force them to fight on our terms, not theirs. A human tactical officer, Lieutenant Bora Nam, pulled up reconnaissance data. We've identified 3 key pheromone relay stations in this sector. They're hidden in asteroid clusters protected by heavy patrols. If we eliminate those stations, the Vexirian fleet loses cohesion. How do we reach them? Asked a coalition marine commander. The approaches are heavily defended. We don't bring the fight to them, Colonel Sung-Ho said with a thin smile. We let special operations teams infiltrate, small, quiet, invisible, until it's too late. Day One pulled up footage from one of his earlier battles. Mars, 30 years ago. Small human teams moving through industrial ruins, taking down enemy positions one by one. This is what we did during the Mars Rebellion. We were outnumbered 10-1. We won by refusing to fight the way they expected. He looked around the room. The Coalition has been trying to beat the Vexirians in straight combat, speed against speed, strength against strength. That's their game, and they're winning. So we change games. We use stealth, misdirection, and patience. We hit them where they're weak, avoid their strengths, and make them fight in ways they're not designed for. Dr. Minji Kang entered the briefing, carrying data tablets. We've synthesized a counteragent for Vexirian chemical weapons. It's ready for distribution. Coalition forces can be inoculated within 24 hours. That changes things, Velthar said, straightening. Some of his old confidence returned. If we're immune to their chemical attacks, we're not immune, Minji corrected gently. We're resistant. There's a difference. But yes, it levels the field somewhat. Daewon began outlining the operation. We call it Operation Broken Nest. Phase 1. Colonel Sung-ho leads special operations teams to destroy the pheromone relay stations. Phase 2. Lieutenant June leads a fighter squadron through the Helios asteroid field to harass and distract their main fleet. Phase 3. The main coalition and human fleet engage in a fighting retreat, drawing Vexirian forces into a prepared kill zone. A retreat? A coalition officer looked offended. That's cowardice. That's tactics, Hana replied sharply. You retreat to draw the enemy where you want them. Then you stop retreating and start killing. Daewon zoomed in on a specific region of space, dense asteroid field, unstable gravitational patterns, abandoned mining stations. This is where we make our stand. Terrain favors defense, multiple choke points, limited approach vectors. The Vexirians will have numbers but not maneuverability. Sergeant Jin Park raised his hand. Commander, about those pheromone stations. How close do we need to get? Inside their outer hull, Sung-ho answered. Plant demolition charges on the primary communication organs. We estimate 15 minutes to breach, plant charges and extract. 15 minutes inside a Vexirian station, Jin said slowly. That's going to be interesting. That's one word for it, Sung-ho replied. I'm taking 3 teams, volunteers only. This is high risk. Every human special operations soldier in the room volunteered immediately. Sung-ho selected his teams carefully, choosing veterans with experience in hostile environment operations. They would go in with minimal equipment, no backup, and no guarantee of extraction. Lieutenant June studied the flight plan for his squadron. This route through the asteroid field, Commander, it's extremely dangerous. One miscalculation, and we're debris. I know, Daewon said. That's why coalition pilots can't do it. Their reflexes are faster than ours, but their ships are bigger and less maneuverable. Your fighters are small and agile. More importantly, human pilots have something most coalition species don't. What's that? Asked a young pilot. Fear that keeps you careful, Daewon replied. Coalition species evolved as apex predators. They're brave to the point of recklessness. Humans evolved as prey. We learn to be brave and careful. That combination keeps you alive in tight situations. Chief Engineer Yuna presented her modifications to human weapon systems. I've been working on electromagnetic pulse generators. Vexirian bioships use electrical signals for internal systems. High-intensity EMP bursts should disrupt their functions without permanent damage to our own systems. Without permanent damage? Velthar asked skeptically. Well, mostly without, Yuna admitted. Maybe bring backup power cores. The planning continued for hours. Every detail examined, every contingency prepared for. The coalition officers watched in growing respect. They had fought with courage and strength. But humans fought with something they were beginning to understand. the accumulated wisdom of a species that had spent millennia learning how to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. As the briefing ended, Velthar approached Day-Wan privately. "Commander, I owe you an apology. I called your species weak." "We are weak," Day-Wan said simply. "Physically, at least. Any Krillian warrior could break me in half." "Then why am I the one asking for your help?" Day-Wan looked at the tactical displays, at the plans they had made. "Because strength breaks when it meets something stronger. But skill, experience, and stubborn refusal to die, those things carry you through when strength fails. We humans learned that lesson the hard way. Now we're going to teach it to the Vexirians." Velthar extended his hand, a human gesture he had learned. "Then teach them well, Commander. All of Coalition space depends on it." Day-Wan shook his hand. "We will. Not because we're heroes, but because we're too stubborn to lose." Operation Broken Nest began at 0400 hours. Colonel Sung-Ho Bei and his teams moved through the darkness of space in small infiltration craft. Their ships were designed to be invisible, coating that absorbed sensor beams, engines that left minimal heat signatures. They approached the first pheromone relay station slowly, carefully, like predators stalking dangerous prey. Sergeant Jin Park was on Sung-Ho's team. He checked his demolition charges one final time, magnetic clamps ready, timer set. Around him, 5 other specialists prepared their equipment. Nobody spoke. Hand signals only. They had trained for this, but training and reality were different things. The Vexirian station loomed ahead, a massive organic structure that pulsed with bioluminescent light. It looked alive because it was alive, grown rather than built, with thick armor plating and weapons systems that tracked approaching threats. The team's infiltration craft slipped between its sensors, finding a maintenance port that intelligence had identified. "Breaching," Sung-Ho whispered into his comm. The cutting laser made no sound in vacuum, but they could feel vibrations through their suits as it carved through the outer hull. Chemical smells filled their helmets as alien atmosphere leaked out. Then they were inside. The interior was worse than expected. Organic corridors that seemed to breathe, walls that oozed fluids, and the constant chemical fog of pheromone communication. Through their helmet sensors, they could see the invisible signals being transmitted. The whole station was one massive communications array. "Primary organ should be at the core," Jin said, consulting his scanner. 200 meters straight ahead." They moved quickly but carefully. Vexirian drones patrolled the corridors, insect-like creatures with razor-sharp limbs. The humans pressed into alcoves, staying still as death. The drones had poor eyesight but excellent chemical sensors. The human team's sealed suits made them nearly invisible, just cold objects in a living ship. Meanwhile, Lieutenant June launched his fighters from the carrier bay. 12 small craft, each piloted by veterans of the asteroid mining patrol conflicts. Those had been ugly fights, ships dodging through dense rock fields while under fire. The pilots had learned precision flying or died young. The survivors were the best. "Stay tight," June ordered over the squadron channel. "Single file through the initial approach, then split into pairs once we're inside the field." The asteroid field of Helios was dense and unstable. Chunks of rock ranging from small boulders to mountain-sized fragments tumbled through space, colliding and breaking apart constantly. Navigation computers showed red warning lines everywhere. Coalition pilots had refused to attempt this route, calling it suicide. Human pilots called it Tuesday. They had flown worse on the outer colonies. The first few minutes were tense. June's fighter slipped between asteroids with meters to spare. Behind him, his squadron followed like a chain of linked dancers. One mistake would cause a catastrophic collision. Nobody made mistakes. "Vexirian patrol detected," his sensor officer reported. 6 contacts closing on our position. "They can't follow us in here," June said confidently. "Their ships are too big." He proved correct. The Vexirian ships attempted pursuit, but their organic hulls were twice the size of human fighters. Within minutes, two had collided with asteroids. The others pulled back, unable to match human maneuverability. "Phase 2, June announced. "Hit and run tactics. Make them angry." The fighters emerged from the asteroid field in unexpected locations, fired missiles at Vexirian supply lines, then disappeared back into the rocks. It was infuriating for the enemy. Like being stung by insects they could not catch. Vexirian forces diverted ships to hunt the fighters, pulling strength away from their main fleet. Back on the relay station, Sung Ho's team reached the core chamber. The primary communication organ was massive, a pulsing biological structure that filled the entire room. It beat like a heart, sending chemical signals throughout Vexirian space. "Plant charges," Sung Ho ordered. "Timer set for 10 minutes. Jin moved forward with his team, attaching explosive packages to key points on the organ. The charges were small but precisely designed. They would not destroy the station, but they would destroy its ability to communicate. Behind them, other teams were hitting the second and third stations simultaneously. Alarms began to sound. Chemical, not audio. The station knew intruders were present. Vexirian drones rushed toward the core chamber, their movements frantic and aggressive. "Time to go," Sung Ho said calmly. "Fighting retreat, cover and move." The team fell into practiced patterns. 3 soldiers fired while 3 moved. Then switch. They had done this 1,000 times in training, dozens of times in real combat. Human soldiers were not stronger than Vexirian drones. They were not faster. But they were coordinated and disciplined in ways that individual drones could not match. Private Minho Choi was with the main fleet preparing for Phase 3. His unit held defensive positions on the outer hull of the flagship, manning point defense weapons. Around him, Coalition Marines took similar positions. The plan was to retreat, draw the Vexirians into the kill zone, then turn and fight. "Feels wrong," Minho said to the soldier next to him, a veteran named Corporal Sua Lim. "Retreating on purpose." "That's because you think retreat means defeat," Sua replied. She had fought in the Europa siege, 14 months of desperate combat against corporate security forces. Sometimes retreat is just movement. You back up, enemy follows thinking you're weak, then you stop backing up and they run into a wall of gunfire. The Vexirian main fleet came fast, sensing weakness. The coalition fleet began its retreat, maintaining formation but giving ground steadily. Vexirian ships pursued eagerly, their swarm patterns tightening as they smelled victory. Then the pheromone relay stations exploded, all 3 simultaneously. The coordinated swarm patterns collapsed instantly. Vexirian ships scattered, suddenly blind to each other's positions and intentions. Ships collided, formation broke apart, and confusion reigned. "Now," Daewon ordered from the command center. "All ships full stop. Turn and engage." The coalition fleet stopped retreating and opened fire. Caught by surprise, unable to coordinate, the Vexirian fleet took devastating casualties. Yuna's EMP weapons pulsed across space, disabling organic ships that relied on electrical signals. Human precision firing targeted command vessels and communication nodes. The battle that followed was brutal and one-sided. The Vexirians were strong, fast, and deadly. But without coordination, without their swarm tactics, they were just individual predators facing organized resistance. And humans had spent their entire evolution learning how to bring down predators that could kill them individually. Minho found himself firing his weapon continuously for hours. His arms ached, his vision blurred from fatigue, but he kept firing. Around him, other humans did the same. Coalition Marines, seeing human endurance, pushed themselves harder than they had thought possible. "They don't stop," a Krillian Marine said, with something like awe. "They're exhausted, but they don't stop." "Welcome to fighting alongside humans," his commander replied. "They're not built for this. They do it anyway." 14 hours after the operation began, the Vexirian fleet broke, not defeated completely, but damaged enough to recognize they could not win. They withdrew in disorder, leaving behind destroyed ships and confusion. Sung Ho's teams made it back to their extraction points with minutes to spare. Jin was wounded, a chemical burn across his shoulder, but alive. All 3 stations were destroyed. Jun's fighter squadron returned with only minor damage, having led Vexirian patrols on a frustrating chase through impossible terrain. In the command center, Daewon received damage reports. Human casualties were lighter than expected. Coalition casualties were heavy, but sustainable. The Vexirians had lost nearly 40% of their attacking force. Velthar appeared on screen, his expression transformed. "Commander Kim, your tactics, they worked. We actually won." "We survived," Daewon corrected. "Winning comes next. This was just the opening move." He looked at the star charts, at the Vexirian territory beyond. "Now they know we can hurt them. Now they will learn what it means to fight veterans who refuse to die." The Vexirian leadership fortress sat at the edge of their territory, a massive structure built into an asteroid. It was both command center and symbol of power. Intelligence reports confirmed that their war leader, a creature called Vexthor, directed all military operations from this location. Daewon studied the fortress defenses and saw a problem that would cost lives to solve. "It's heavily defended," Hana said, her tactical analysis showing layers of weapons, platforms, and patrol routes. "They learned from our previous attacks. Pheromone communications are now localized and redundant. We cannot blind them again the same way." "We don't need to blind them," Daewon replied. "We need to challenge them directly. Show them that humans and the coalition together are stronger than their swarm." Velthar, attending the planning session in person now, nodded slowly. His wounds had healed, but he carried himself differently, more carefully, more thoughtfully. "A direct assault. You said before that was foolish." "It was foolish when you tried it alone with only strength," Daewon said. "Now we have strength and strategy together. That changes the equation." The assault plan was complex. Coalition forces would provide the main attack, using their superior firepower and durability. Human forces would handle infiltration, precision strikes, and tactical coordination. It combined the best of both approaches, raw power guided by experienced wisdom. Colonel Sung Ho would lead another special operations team deep into the fortress to disable internal defenses. Lieutenant Jun's fighters would provide air support and engage enemy fighters. The main fleet would breach the outer defenses and hold the line while ground forces pushed inside. Private Minho Choi was assigned to the main assault force. He checked his rifle for the 20th time, a nervous habit. Sergeant Jin Park, shoulder bandaged but still combat-ready, noticed. "First major ground assault?" "Yes, Sergeant." "Stay with your team. Watch your corners. Remember that Vexirians are fast, but predictable. They attack in straight lines, always toward the nearest threat." Jin handed him extra ammunition magazines. "And if something seems wrong, trust that feeling. Fear keeps you alive." The assault began with a massive, coordinated strike. Coalition warships hammered the fortress defenses with heavy weapons. The asteroid shook from impacts, pieces breaking off and tumbling into space. Vexirian defenders responded with swarms of fighters and concentrated chemical weapon attacks. Dr. Minji Kang's counter-agent proved its worth. Coalition Marines advanced through clouds of toxic chemicals that would have killed them days ago. They were not completely immune, but they were protected enough to keep fighting. The Vexirians had lost their most effective weapon. Jun's fighter squadron engaged enemy craft in the tight space around the fortress. This was not the open asteroid field where humans had advantages. This was close-quarters combat where Vexirian speed and numbers dominated. His pilots took casualties. 2 fighters destroyed in the first minutes, but they held formation and kept fighting. "Target their launch bays," June ordered, dodging incoming fire through instinct and skill. "Stop them from launching more fighters." Precision missiles struck Vexirian launch facilities. Explosions blossomed across the fortress surface, blocking hangar exits. The enemy fighter presence began to thin, not because humans were winning individually, but because they were fighting smarter, targeting infrastructure instead of engaging in endless dogfights. Ground forces breached the fortress through multiple entry points. Minho's unit advanced through corridors similar to the relay station, but larger and more defended. Vexirian soldiers were everywhere, their chitinous bodies moving with terrible speed. Coalition Marines met them head-on, strength against strength. Human soldiers supported from behind, firing over their larger allies' shoulders, covering flanks and watching for ambushes. "Contact rear!" someone shouted. Minho spun and fired without thinking, his training taking over. 3 Vexirian drones fell, their ambush ruined by human alertness. A Coalition Marine nodded thanks, unable to watch behind while fighting ahead. They were learning to fight together. Coalition strength combined with human tactical awareness. The Vexirians were learning too, but learning that these prey had become predators. Sung-Ho's team reached the internal defense network deep in the fortress. Unlike the relay station, this was actively defended. Vexirian elite guards, larger and better armed than regular soldiers, stood between them and their objective. The firefight was intense and close range. "Suppress them," Sung-Ho ordered. His team laid down continuous fire while he moved forward with a shaped charge. Vexirian weapons tore through the air around him. One grazed his leg, burning through armor. He kept moving, planted the charge, and fell back. The explosion disabled the fortress's automated defenses throughout 3 entire sections. Coalition forces poured through the newly vulnerable areas, pressing deeper toward the command center where Vexthor directed his forces. Chief Engineer Yuna had modified several weapons specifically for this assault. Sonic disruptors that affected Vexirian auditory organs, thermal weapons that targeted their heat-sensitive areas. Every piece of Vexirian biology that humans had studied became a weakness to exploit. It was not honorable. It was not fair. It was effective. The Coalition had fought with honor and strength. Humans fought to win. Minho's unit reached a massive central chamber, some kind of coordination center. Vexirian soldiers defended it desperately. The fighting was savage. Coalition Marines pushed forward, their natural armor absorbing hits that would kill humans. Human soldiers fired from covered positions, their accuracy and tactical awareness making every shot count. Hours passed. The fortress was large, and the fighting was room by room, corridor by corridor. Exhaustion began to show. Coalition soldiers, stronger than humans, started to slow. They had evolved for quick, explosive combat, not sustained warfare. Humans, designed by evolution to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, kept going. "How are they still fighting?" a Krillian officer asked Velthar, watching human Marines advance through a section that should have been impassable. They were wounded, exhausted, barely standing, but still moving forward. "Persistence hunting," Velthar said, remembering Daewon's earlier lessons. On Earth, humans hunted by following prey for days until it died from exhaustion. They did not need to be faster or stronger. They only needed to refuse to stop. Finally, Daewon's forces reached the command center. The doors were massive organic structures, sealed and defended. Vexthor waited inside with his elite guards. Daewon could have called for a siege, starved them out, but that would give the Vexirians time to adapt again, to plan new strategies. Instead, he used one of Yuna's special weapons, a resonance device that matched the frequency of Vexirian organic structures and tore them apart from within. The doors collapsed inward, and coalition forces charged through. The final battle was brief but violent. Vexthor was enormous, twice the size of Coalition soldiers, with natural weapons that had killed hundreds. He fought with the desperate fury of a leader watching his fortress fall. His guards were elite, trained, and experienced. But Daewon's forces were veterans of 100 battles across multiple worlds. They had learned long ago that size and strength meant nothing against coordinated tactics. Coalition Marines attacked from the front, absorbing Vexthor's attention. Human soldiers flanked, targeting his guards, isolating him. Sung Ho personally disabled Vexthor's communication equipment, cutting him off from his forces. In the end, Vexthor stood alone, surrounded, wounded but still dangerous. He looked at Daewon with compound eyes that showed confusion more than hatred. "You are weak," he said through a translation device. "Prey species. How did prey defeat us?" Daewon approached carefully, rifle ready. "We were prey once. Then we learned to use tools, to cooperate, to think ahead. We became predators not through strength, but through refusing to die." He gestured at the ruined command center, at the combined human and coalition forces. "You evolved to be perfect hunters. We evolved to survive anything. Guess which one wins wars?" Vexthor collapsed, his wounds finally overwhelming him. The Vexirian forces throughout the fortress, leaderless and broken, began to surrender. Some fled deeper into their territory. The battle was over. The casualties were heavy. Humans had lost good soldiers. Coalition forces had paid a terrible price. But they had won, not through individual strength, but through combined effort and hard-learned strategy. Days later, in a formal ceremony aboard the Coalition flagship, Velthar stood before the combined fleet. His voice was broadcast across dozens of worlds. "I called humans weak. I called them fragile. I was wrong." He looked directly at Daewon. "They are strong in ways I did not understand. The strength to endure, to adapt, to learn from every failure and keep fighting. They taught us that power without wisdom is worthless." He extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. The Coalition restructures its military doctrine today. Human tactical concepts will be integrated into all future operations. Human advisors will train our forces, and humanity earns full recognition as a military power in this galaxy. Daewon shook his hand. "We did not do this for recognition, Admiral. We did it because it needed doing." "That," Velthar said with something like a smile, "is exactly why you deserve it." Months later, after the ceremonies and speeches ended, Daewon stood in his private quarters on the transport home. His hair had gone grayer, new scars marked his body. He was 53 years old and felt every year of it. Hana joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Retiring?" she asked. "Yes, someone else's turn to fight." "What will you tell them? The young soldiers who ask what made the difference?" Daewon thought about that. About Mars and Europa, and 1,000 desperate battles, about learning that survival required more than hope. "I will tell them that we won because we refused to be what others expected. They saw weakness. We showed endurance. They saw prey. We showed predators who learned to think." He sipped his coffee. "And I will tell them that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the galaxy is not the strongest creature, but the one that survives longest." Lieutenant June received command of the first Joint Coalition human ship, with a crew of multiple species working under human tactical doctrine. Private Minho Choi became Sergeant Minho Choi, training new Marines in the lessons learned from the Vexirian War. Captain Hana Park accepted the position of Chief Tactical Advisor to the Coalition fleet, where her strategies would shape military thinking for generations. The galaxy had learned its lesson, written in blood and victory. Never underestimate humans. Not because they were strong, but because they were survivors, and survivors did whatever was necessary to keep surviving.